actually really appreciated Patton's last comments about divinity and how Krishna shows us that you can't put gods into like neatly defined boxes. I feel the same way about people. You can't put complex human beings into neatly defined boxes by ethnicity or background or religious tradition. But it is still no accident that our panel includes both clergy and lay leadership, and folks whose background is directly immigrant communities from India, as well as Indo-Caribbean, as well as not Indian by ethnicity, different perspectives on Hindu community life in New York, different kind of pieces of the puzzle of Hindu life in New York. And I think I'll leave it at that, and I invite you guys to share a little bit about your work, about your communities, and then we'll and also can you introduce yourself again?
My name is
Pranada. We like to have generational diversity in our conversations. This is our youngest community leader in today's panel, Pandit Prakash's daughter. So I have should we just go down the row? Vanita, do you mind?
Sure.
Speaking first? I can also get your.
My picture's ready?
Yeah, and I can go through these for you if you want.
That would be great. Good morning, everyone. I'm Vanita Yogeshwar. I teach Purna Vidya classes, which is an introductory Hindu class for children kindergarten through grade 12. And this is at the Staten Island Ram Mandir. We have started to teach at the Ram Mandir for the past 7 or 8 years. Before that, teachers would take up the curriculum and have classes at their home. And that's where my children, who are now in college, started their introduction to Hinduism. But since that time, we have moved the classes to the temple, a more formal setting for the children to learn about Hinduism and practice the 16-step puja, which is the actual performance of rituals on how to worship the god. So just like you would have in a Catholic church, lighting of the candles, the incense, the offering of the flowers, the offering of food, narrating the prayers, the mantras, the children are actually taught to go through 16 steps of puja, and there is a curriculum, a book which has been developed particularly for Purna Vidya, and they go through that. So that being said, I think I will give others the opportunity to introduce their piece of work.
Well, let's give.
You want me to?
Yeah, let's have each person have a few minutes to sort of unpack a little bit more about their work, but then we'll have questions and sort of conversation for everyone afterwards.
So we have 2 classes. There is a junior class and a senior class. The juniors are between the ages of 3. They start very young. They come to class, they sit, and they listen to all the fun stuff that's happening, the stories from the Mahabharata and the Ramayana that we were talking about in the previous session. These are the 2 large Hindu epics. Ramayana narrates the story of Lord Rama, and he is exiled from the kingdom by his stepmom, and he goes with his brother Lakshmana. He has 4 brothers, Lakshmana being one of them. Accompanies him and his wife Sita. They are exiled into the forest for 14 years. And the adventures that they have. In the meanwhile, Sita is abducted. Now they are facing Ravana, the demon king of Sri Lanka. In those days it was called Lanka. And how they fight the battle to win Sita back and bring her home, and he's reinstated on the throne. So stories of Ramayana have very colorful characters. One is Hanuman, who is the monkey god, and he becomes a true friend of Rama. We encourage our children in discussions to talk about the nature of the represented gods. They actually become very close to these gods in the stories that we tell them. We get into details about the stories, every single aspect of what was Rama's character, what do you think is Lakshmana's character, the sages, the rishis that come into their lives as they are in the forest, the demons that they have to face. And the demons are representative of our own demons that we face in our life. You know, people that could be fascinating from the outside. They can have beautiful looks, and they represent themselves in front of Rama as gorgeous women, and they tempt him, and he has to actually fight her off. And then there are demons who come in as temptresses, or very powerful demons who are cruel, ugly, who can kill. So these are representations of demons in our own personal lives that we have to fight and battle. But telling something which is so abstract to children could become very difficult for them to understand. But when you put them in the form of a demoness, and we show pictures which have been, you know, representative of that kind of a beautiful woman who tempts Rama, who tempts Lakshmana, then that becomes even more real for them to know, okay, these are temptations that we can avoid as we carry on in life. How to be a good husband, how to be a good friend to your wife, how to be a good friend to another friend. And when we talk about Hanuman, we emphasize points on how loyal he was to Lord Rama. And when we talk about the stories of Vali and Sugriva, who are monkey kings, they're the brothers who get into an argument about the throne of the kingdom, but due to a misunderstanding, they have a falling out. And Rama at that point shows his fallibility as a human being when he supports one brother over another. Instead of being very neutral in this situation, he actually supports Sugriva because he hadn't heard the whole story. So we teach our children, first listen to the whole story, make sure that you have an understanding of both parties before you come to a judgment. And Rama was representative of Lord Vishnu on this earth, but he still made mistakes. He is called the Parama Purusha, which means the ultimate man. And that's how we worship Rama, as the Parama Purusha. But still he has his fallibilities. He still has his mistakes, his problems, you know. He is blind to what is right and wrong sometimes when he's pressured by the public to question his wife when she comes back from living with Ravana for a period of time. He tells her, Sita, I know that you were abducted by Ravana and that you lived with him, but nothing ever happened between the two of you, that you were pure. I know that, but the people are questioning me. I need to appease the people. So these are the kinds of mistakes that human beings make, and because they want popularity, just like a politician would require popularity, you know, contest to be won to keep his throne, Rama falls into that trap. So even though he's the Parama Purusha, he gets into these manifestations of human feelings and the mistakes that we as human beings make. On the other hand, you have the Mahabharata, where Lord Krishna's avatara is the key avatara that is manifested. And Krishna knows, even from infancy, that he is a representation of Lord Vishnu. Rama never knew he was a representation of Lord Vishnu, that he was an avatara. As an avatara in the human form, Rama had no idea that he was the god. But Krishna knew even from when he was a child. He opened his mouth one day when he was being really naughty, and Krishna is always portrayed as this naughty infant child who, you must have seen those pictures where he's got a pot of butter that his mother has churned, and they were all a family of cowherds, so they had a lot of milk products, and his mother would churn the butter out of the milk, and he would love to steal butter and eat it. No matter which high shelf she put it on, Krishna knew how to get it and eat it. And he would always blame his other friends. He would say, I was getting it for him, or they tricked me into getting it. So those kinds of things. And once when Yashoda, his adopted mom, said, Krishna, no, I need you to open your mouth and show me that you have the butter in your mouth. I see butter sticking all over your face. Open that mouth and I want to see it. And when he opens his mouth, he reveals the entire universe in his mouth. So he knows he's the incarnate of Vishnu. He's the ultimate God. And with that knowledge, Krishna goes up, and the story continues where his first cousins, Arjuna, is having a battle with his first cousins, and this is about territory and lands and the kingdom of Hastinapura, which is at that time representative of India. So Krishna is very neutral. He goes to both the sets of his first cousins, Arjuna as well as Duryodhana, and he says, which of you want me on your side? You can either have me or you can have my armies. Duryodhana chooses Krishna's armies to fight the battle, and Arjuna says, I'll take you. Arjuna has no idea that Krishna is God incarnate, but he says, with you on my side, there's nothing that I cannot accomplish. And the Mahabharata goes on to talk about Arjuna's self-battles with how am I going to be killing my entire cousin, their families, my gurus who are partaking of this fight, my uncle who is the present king. How I don't want any land, I don't want any territories, let them have it. That's when Krishna steps in and says, it is not about you. Stop thinking about yourself as so important that anything you think is what you need to do. It is not about the self. It is about what your community wants. It is about what you have to do, your dharma as a king, your dharma as a ruler, your dharma as a son, as a brother. These are important things that you have to cover, and you have to do what is right according to dharma, and not about your selfish reasons that I don't want to kill people and I don't want to fight my family. That's not what it is. It is fighting for the righteousness, because if you give up at this point, then dharma breaks down. Everyone looks up to you to uphold dharma. You and your four brothers have to uphold dharma, and that is important. And your karma at this point, your actions which follow your duty, which is dharma, has to be to fight the war. So we represent these stories to our children in very simplistic form, and we have them express it in little plays, sections of the Mahabharata and the Ramayana.
Can you show some of these?
So this is the prayer class that we have. We have about 12 to 15 students, depending on...
There was one that was, of one of the plays.
So this is the religion class itself. This is the plays, the demon kings. So
Sorry.
this is one of our students who's performing a dance for the king during the event. And this is our entire class.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Let's just go one picture at a time, and we'll just I'll just explain what's going on there. Okay, this is the part of the 16-step puja. As you can see, we have a small altar with the gods that are placed on the altar. We light the lamp. There's a lamp lighting prayer that they learn, and they understand why we have to light a lamp, which is to dispel darkness. The darkness they understand is the darkness of the mind and the soul that we are dispelling with the light. And any negative thoughts that we might have is dispelled by light, as in most religions. There's always a lamp lighting ceremony when it comes to starting the worshipping of the gods. So the children take a moment to gather themselves. There's some breathing exercises I walk them through. So this is conducting. The littlest of the children, the one who's sitting there to whom I'm handing the little damru, is 3 years old. And we have some children in the back who are on a visit from college holidays. So they just come in, you know, even though they have finished and graduated, they know classes every Sunday at 4:15. They show up. They love to participate in it. It might be for the prasadam, which is the sweets and fruits that we give. It's possible.
Sweets never hurt.
You know? So there's always a lot of fruits and flowers and incense and sweets that I make for the class, and I bring it, and they just absolutely enjoy. In fact, after every class, they'll say, "What are you bringing next class?" So there's usually sweet on demand as well. So these are the Ramayana plays in which that's Lord Rama, then standing next to him is his brother Lakshmana. The bigger the crown, the more higher you are in the hierarchy. Then these little, I like to make the littlest ones into demons because they love to get painted with false mustaches and the only dialogue they are trained to say is, "Yes, my lord." They do it dutifully and they love it. They love to wear all the artificial jewelry. One of our students also, many of our students, female students, learn the Bharatanatyam, which is the traditional Indian, Southern Indian classical form of dance, which was usually performed in temples as well as in kingly courts. And this class, that's another teacher of mine, of our class. We both run the curriculum. She teaches the seniors and I teach the juniors. Senior is after 5th grade, I think, the cutoff. It depends on how a child progresses. So between 5th and 6th grade, we graduate them off. And in the higher grades, we teach them more about the Vedantic philosophies and how it affects our day-to-day lives. It is less about the stories from the Mahabharata and the Ramayana because by then they have already gone through the entire curriculum of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata and the stories from the Bhagavatam, which are stories about Lord Krishna and other Hindu deities. So they have a very good understanding of what each deity represents. And when they have religion class in school, sometimes the children come and give us feedback. They say, "Vanita auntie, today we spoke about Hinduism in our class." I said, "Yes, and what did you learn from it?" They say, "My teacher said that Hinduism is a polytheistic religion." And I said, "Okay, and what did you have to say about that?" Well, I told her that it's not polytheistic, it is monotheistic religion. And we just have various gods to represent each of our favorite Ishtadevatas, that is our favorite god representations. And it's easy for us to focus on what little thing we want when we have a representative figure of a god. If we have Krishna, we know we can focus on certain things. If we have Shiva, we can focus on other things. If we have Saraswati, we can focus on something else. And I showed them the pictures and I showed them how it is a monotheistic religion, but just being represented by other gods. Just like you have stations of the cross in your church. And they go to Catholic schools and they're able to put the two together and draw parallels. So that has been just fantastic, the way they are able to draw parallels about it. And when we talk about the avatars of Vishnu, and we talk about the Matsya avatara, which is the fish, they say, this sounds very much like Noah's Ark. So they do draw parallels. There is no confusion in attending a Catholic religious school as well as studying Hinduism. They're able to have that combination which comes from both religions, which actually enhances the way they look at things and have respect for other religions and cultures.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want me to?
I can do it if
Okay.
you want to, if you prefer to,
Sure, I can
to sit and just give me cues.
Okay, no problem. So we'll just dive right in. Namaste, everyone. Namaste means I bow to the divinity that is within each of you, because in Hinduism we believe that every single entity has divinity within it. So I am Aminta, and I'm an Indo-Caribbean Hindu New Yorker. So I have a PowerPoint presentation that'll guide my historical overview of what it means to be an Indo-Caribbean Hindu New Yorker. So I often have, over the course of my life, gone through a bit of an identity crisis because people look at me and I look like many of our panelists here, but when you listen to my parents talk, they sound like a reggae song, basically. We have Caribbean accents. I'll speak later about this, but we only speak English. So, but we're Hindu, very much Hindu, and so there's a story behind all of this that I'd like to take you all through. So in the early 1800s, when India was under British colonial rule, several people in India were duped into thinking that coming to the Caribbean would mean that they would be able to explore the land of gold, El Dorado as an example. Guyana, where my parents are from,
is often referred to as El Dorado, this land of gold. They were brought over after slavery was abolished as indentured servants with a contract that was, it was not slavery, but it actually was very much slavery in the way it actually functioned. And so they were brought over on ships to the Caribbean, where Afro-Caribbeans already were, and they worked plantations and struggled very much so under British colonial rule. They were mistreated. They were forced to give up a lot of their identity, give up their faith at times for purposes of rising up in the ranks in their employment, etc. My husband's grandfather, this is a funny story. So his actual name is Kilawan-Narine, but because of British influence, he ended up becoming Howard. Howard. There's a lot of confusion about naming as well. So names were skewed on birth certificates, etc. Some say it's purposeful. Some say it was purposeful. That remains to be seen. But there was a lot of that. Like I said, there were conversions, and people really struggled with their identity. But there was a lot of resilience as well. So the Caribbean Hindus who migrated over to the Caribbean had to struggle under British rule. Like I said, their language was lost. So many of us do not speak a word of our mother tongue, but even though we're twice removed, many of us migrated to the United States and many reside in New York, we were able to maintain our Hinduism, and it's actually very beautiful that we were able to do so and hold on to our faith. Vanita mentioned that there are certain scriptures that are prevalent in Hinduism. The Ramayana and the Gita, as an example, were two that were championed in Indo-Caribbean colonial history, in part perhaps because of the storytelling elements that were incorporated in these various scriptures, because they were able to be sung. Song and music is often a way in which to preserve tradition and culture, and that is also the case in Indo-Caribbean history, Hindu history, where these scriptures were particularly centered, even though Hinduism has a massive amount of scriptures and is a very diverse religion in of itself, these two were lifted up because of that very content. So the records, though, were lost in terms of, I personally don't know where my ancestors come from in India. I'd love to someday be able to explore and figure that out, but many of us don't know, and there's a struggle because a lot of the documents that were in the archives in the Caribbean have since been destroyed. So we have no way to trace back where we come from. So like I said, a little bit of an identity crisis. But there is documentation to prove that many Caribbeans who migrated from India were from Bihar and from Uttar Pradesh. Some also who are Tamil from regions in Madras, etc. So we talked about the Ramayana. Vanita did a really good job of summing it up. The Ramayana, again, is championed. This is New York City. This is a festival that's actually coming up. It happens every year in August in Queens, and it's outdoors. It's called Ramayana in the Park, and droves of Hindus, Indo-Caribbean Hindus, visit because this particular festival is reminiscent of what they would see back home in Guyana, in Trinidad, and Suriname, and other places where Caribbeans from India, Hindus from India ended up in the Caribbean. So here, there are many devotees. It's under a tent, under the night sky. Like I said, very reminiscent of the Caribbean. And every night, there's a different spiritual leader who presides over the various night, and they sing praises about the Ramayana. And it's often said that the esteem of a spiritual leader or a pundit, and our pundits. So one of the differences, I think, in Indo-Caribbean Hinduism is that pundits are they're expected to be jacks of all trades. So they have to not only officiate the rituals, but they also have to give sermons. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But the esteem of a pundit is often tied to how well they can read the Ramayana, how well they can deliver these scriptural stories and sing. And singing is a big thing. They also have to be expected to sing as well. So there's a lot that they have to do. So this, on the left, this is my temple. It's called the Shree Ram Mandir. It's in Ozone Park, Queens. And this is actually the Mother's Day service at my temple, where all of the elderly moms are honored. We do this every year. We have a little ceremony for them. And you'll see behind them, there's a pantheon of Hindu gods and goddesses. So that is very typical of what an Indo-Caribbean Hindu temple looks like. It's a bit different from the East Indian temples, where usually there is a mandir for each respective god or goddess, and you walk to each one and you
Right,
provide
they're like the
offerings.
stations.
Right, there are stations. Here, they're all together in a pantheon. You'll see on the right-hand side of that particular picture that there's a bit of a throne-looking structure. That's where the pundit, the spiritual leader of the temple, will sit and deliver a sermon. And so that's very reminiscent of the Christian Mass in part. And another interesting thing to note about Indo-Caribbean Hindu temples is usually they're not open every day of the week. They're typically only open on Sundays, and that is in part because of this tradition that stems back from the Caribbean, where plantation owners would allow Sunday to be a day of rest because many were Christian, and so that ended up being the day where plantation workers would have their day of rest and be able to worship. And so this ended up showing itself in the form of our worship. And the Indo-Caribbean Hindu worship is very much congregational in nature. Everybody gets together. There's a sense of community. On the right side, this is Chautal. So right before folks know Holi, which is the festival of colors. So in the Caribbean, it's called Pagua. And typically, congregants and Hindus will get together and they'll have this form of competitive singing where they sit in a circle. There's a call and response. Often it's like men against women. There are different ways in which it plays out. Sometimes there's children who participate. I'm not very fond of this type of singing, only because I'm loud now, but I don't sing very loudly. You're expected to sing very loudly and be super competitive. And there are in Queens, there are lots of temples that participate in Queens-wide or city-wide Chautal competitions, and there's a winner at the end who gets a trophy. So it's very interesting, and this faith, and this is a way in which the tradition has been passed on over the years, and people get really excited about it. And this particular type of singing came from a North Indian region called it's a Bhojpuri type of song. So again, different ways of trying to rationalize where we've come from. These various different traditions being passed on mean something about our long-term history. And there are lots and lots of temples in New York City, Indo-Caribbean temples specifically. They show up everywhere. I was once interviewed for a book called We Too Sing America about racism and classism that's happening in America. And one of the things that I said was that there are as many temples in Queens as there are roti shops. So there are lots of roti shops in the Caribbean community where you can get really good curries and rotis, but you can also see lots and lots of temples. And they show up, and we don't have a lot of community spaces. So temples and faith institutions end up functioning as default community centers where people can congregate, find a sense of community. And so I don't know if they're on this slide, but there are two temples that are on the same block in a part of Jamaica, Queens, and they're large temples, and they both attract a large congregation. But that just goes to say how many Caribbean Hindus there are in New York City. Guyanese specifically are the second largest immigrant population according to New York City's Department of City Planning. So that says a lot about how large, and a large fraction of Guyanese are Hindu. Hinduism is often preserved, and I think Vanita mentioned some of this, it's often preserved through the arts, and that goes to be said for the Indo-Caribbean community as well. So on the left you'll see, and my parents actually sent me to this academy when I was a kid, the East Indian Music Academy, which has existed in the Indo-Caribbean New York community for over 25 years. Husband and wife duo. The husband is from Trinidad and Tobago. The wife is from Guyana. They studied music in India. They came back and decided they were going to give back to their community by starting this academy, and hundreds, if not thousands, of young people have gone through their hands to learn music, whether through learning how to play the harmonium, which is an accordion-looking instruments, or the tabla, which is the drum, one type of drums, sitar, and so they provide that service. On the right is one of the more popular dance schools in our community, the Natraj Center for Performing Arts, and they too have had many people who've learned dance through its various forms. Again, a way in which to connect back to their faith, because many of the dances that they perform are directly tied to the scriptures. So just
unfortunately go kind of quickly.
okay, I'm good.
Apologize.
No, it's okay. So this is just a bit of like history of for me. That was me in the middle, and this is a very traditional Guyanese. It's a Guyanese puja that families usually do every year, where they raise a flag. And if you drive around Richmond Hill and Queens, if you see those flags in front of a home, you know that an Indo-Caribbean Hindu lives in that home. That's typical of what's served after pujas, or weddings, and 7 different curries. So what's great about
very different form of Indian food. But.
What's great about being Guyanese as well is that I have a very much interfaith family where many of my relatives are Christians, some are Muslims, or married Muslims. So growing up, I always celebrated Christmas. There was never, we had a Christmas tree in our home every year. Easter, we celebrate with our neighbors. We're very integrated in that way. It's very beautiful. We can skip this slide. So my calling to Hinduism after my 20s, because I didn't leave necessarily, but I wasn't resonating with the faith. Like many young people, maybe they stop going on Sundays to their various church services because they're delving deeper into themselves, wondering, having all these big philosophical questions. That was me too. And so I turned the bend as though, and I wasn't connecting my calling to social justice with my practices as a Hindu. And then I had this epiphany where I thought to myself, wait, they're very much integrated and very much intersect with each other. So along with a few others, I co-founded a nonprofit called Sadhana, Coalition of Progressive Hindus, which is exactly that. The organization merges the values at the heart of social justice with those at the heart of Hinduism. Among them, ahimsa, which is nonviolence, ekatva, which is oneness for all, seva, which is selfless service. And so some of the things that we've done, we've helped a temple to become the first Hindu temple in the nation to deem itself a sanctuary space. We started safe conversations in various temples about gender equity in our scriptures, reimagining books like the Ramayana, and uplifting people or characters like Sita as actually female heroines and what that could look like. Some of our work is here, Know Your Rights forums, speaking out whenever we can. A lot of times these aren't connected. Hindus don't always see themselves as activists or speaking out in public, but we're trying to foster that. This was on Sunday, where we were out in Richmond Hill trying to share information about the ICE raids that were happening and making sure that people knew their rights. We do cleanups at Jamaica Bay, which is a place where lots of Hindus, Indo-Caribbean Hindus, go to worship and leave offerings. We're trying to promote eco-friendly worship at various bodies of water, because this is what happens to the murtis that are left. Murtis are the deities that are left there. Some of what we've been partnering with the National Park Service to promote some of this information, making sure that people are eco-friendly. And this was our Pagwa Parade, the annual Holy Parade in Richmond Hill. And we kind of decided we were going to do this we just decided we were going to do it. And we didn't ask permission. We were just like, we're going to bring these signs, uplifting social justice issues. Nothing that was, gender equity and protesting violence against women and uplifting interfaith dialogue, that sort of thing. And we partnered with other organizations to do that. And I think that's it. But that's pretty much.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Namaskar. My name is Prakash. Generally, people are calling always Prakash. So, when we starting, first I want to start with a small prayer. I will preach. Oh, hold your hand just like. Om Bhadram Karane Bhishudiyama Deva Bhadram Pashyema Kshabrija Jatra स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टवान् सस्तनोभिः वेशेम देवहितं यदाजुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति न पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Thank you. So today I am talking about Hinduism. The Hinduism, what is the importance? Why we have to follow Hinduism? And what kind of benefit we can get? And also, where is Hinduism? Hinduism is one of the very old religion that we can find in all the holy books, just like in Mahabharata, Ramayana, and Bhagavad Gita. And also, we can find Vishnu Sahasranam. If you see, if you understand the meaning, we can find where is Hindu religion started, when started, and what is the starting point, and everything. Hinduism is a very strong foundation, and anybody can follow, anybody can understand, anybody can read. If you like, anybody can practice. There's no any issues. So this is open for everybody. We don't have any restriction. Anybody like, they can come, they can follow, they can get benefit. There's so many things are there inside. You can follow you can do the yoga, you can do the meditation, you can do the prayer, you can learn the knowledge, and many things are there. So Hinduism, there's a generation to generation, we can see the same thing. If you see 1,000 years back, the Hinduism is the same, and today also almost the same. Not anything is changed. Why? The main thing is we will mainly refer always Vedas, Shastras, Puranas, and Bhagavad Gita, and of course Ramayana and Mahabharata. That's why if we change it something, everybody knows, and they will ask why you are changing. So that's why we are not changing anything. Whatever and that time was the same thing, today also we are following. That is in our belief. And example, I am priest. Full time I am doing the priest job. I am from India, in South India. I learned Veda and Shastras and the rituals nearly 12 to 14 years. Course I finished. That is my education. And I came last 25 years back here. And here I came to the temple in Flushing Ganesh temple. I worked there nearly 12 years. And right now, part time, full time, I am going to everywhere, every temple. One of the main temple, she told me that is in Staten Island Shree Ram Mandir temple. I am going there. Every Tuesday I am working there last 14 years. And if you have any big festival, main festival, I go there, I will support and supporting to everybody and chanting the Veda mantras and other things. So actually my duty in this community, generally I am teaching Veda and Bhagavad Gita and all the slokas, mantras, and also lot of college student, not only college student, lot of outside people, they need any Hinduism, any doubt or anything, they are coming to my home. Sometime I am going to their home, we will sit, we will talk, and they have any question, whatever I know, I will explain them. If I don't know, I will call my Guruji, my teacher. Otherwise, if I need any help, I will open the book, I will see, and I will explain them, make comfortable, make them happy. That's my duty. And also, other duty, I am going to always create the peace, community to community. If anything bad things happen, just like in 9/11, that time I went to many university and many public places and non-profit organizations, university, and also I went to White House, and also I went to City Hall many times, chanting the mantra, creating the peace, explaining to everybody, we live together, and you have to follow, you have to respect every religion, you have to understand, you have to love. That is main things. And also the other part, I always go make sure in our Hindu people who they are following their religion, they are doing their rituals. We have 16 kinds of rituals we have for everybody. Sometimes they don't know. That time they are calling me, they are asking, so I got baby, what we have to do? I want to get married, what I have to do? And what prayer I have to do? And how much time it will take? What kind of prayer you are going to do? This kind of question they are always asking. So that time I am going to their home and maybe baby is born. I will do baby born puja, do the blessing puja. Maybe they will start new business, going to their office. I will do the Lakshmi puja. They will get a lot of prosperity and good luck. And maybe somebody is in sick. I am going to the hospital. I will go there. I will sit and chant some Mrityunjaya mantra. It's a Lord Shiva mantra, mainly for their recovery and long life. Sometimes I will chant Gayatri mantra, and also sometimes I am chanting Bhagavad Gita. Last week only I went to Long Island Jewish Hospital. There's one lady. She's close to 92 years, and she's from Australia. And the doctor said, life is end. We are very close. That time she wants to listen Bhagavad Gita, and somebody called me. I went to there. I chant the Bhagavad Gita, and she's looking me. Then we believe when we take more God names and chanting the mantra, we'll get more help. So that's why this kind of situation, always I'm going to different place. I will do prayer, and I will do meditation sometime. Sometimes I'm chanting different kind of rituals and mantras. And also, mainly in Hinduism, if you see, we can easily find the small book in Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita, totally, we have 18 chapters. And 18 chapters, every chapter telling little different story. And slowly, if you read, we can understand what is in our life, what is birth, and what is karma, and what is yoga, and what is meditation, and who can practice the yoga and meditation, and what's the age limit. And also, mainly, the Bhagavad Gita says about the food, what kind of food we can eat, and what happening if we take the bad food. And everything is in the Bhagavad Gita, and totally 18 chapters are there. So that is one of the very important book for everybody. It is not for only for any one religion. Anybody they can read, anybody they can understand, anybody they can get that benefit. So Lord Sri Krishna says one of the small slokas, Dharmo Rakshati Rakshita. The meaning, the most important, you have to protect and respect our dharma. Any dharma is okay. Not only Hindu dharma. Anybody, they can follow any dharma. They can respect, they love, they respect. This is the most important. And when we respect, and dharma will respect us back. It means dharma will protect us. That is in our belief. You have to protect the dharma, you have to protect the religion will protect to us back. That is the main point. So, mainly, we have many religious where we go, any country, anywhere. But mainly, in our goal is should be peace in community. Peace in community. Anybody is okay, any religious is okay, but we have to create peace in the community. You have to understand. The main thing is we are not understanding. That's why many confusion is there. There's every dharma, every religion says the same thing. There's no any different. Satyam vada dharman chara. That is every religion says we have to say the truth and follow the dharma. If you do that two things, there is no any confusion. Everybody is brother, sister, only one family. Okay, so I'm concluding one small slokas. Hold again everybody your hand, just like Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhanaktu Sahaviryam karavavahe tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. This is the meaning. Sahana bhavatu. We have to live together. And our life is very short. We don't know when it's finishing. So always you have to live together. And also you have to try to eat together. We have to make one food, you have to eat together. That time only we can get the good taste. And also we have to create good energy, good power. We have lot of power. When we come to everybody's one place, we can create the good power. That power is Shakti. And also we have to get together our religion. Try to every religion come to one place. There is no any issues. We can understand, we can love, and we can live. And also end of the day, we can show the smile to everybody. So this is the main meaning. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. Oh, if you have any question, also you can ask me.
Henry, while I was watching some other presentations, I realized I don't know that you asked if we had any presentation, but if it's possible to put the Bhakti Center website.
Oh, sure. Yeah. It'll take a minute, but
It's an honor to be here with you all today. My name is Kasturi Das. I'm the senior educator at a center in Manhattan called the Bhakti Center, which is within the Bhakti Center is a Hindu temple, a Ramakrishna temple, but it's also I would call it a broader cultural center where we take all the different cultural aspects of you could call it Hindu or the yoga tradition, and present them in a way that they hopefully become relevant to people living here today in New York in the age that we live. So we offer, if you want to just practice yoga and get some peace of mind and meditation, you can come there and do that. If you want to learn the philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita, you can come there and learn that. If you want to learn traditional Indian dance or music, participate in some of the devotional practices, you want to do that. And amongst that broader community that we have, some people want to go deeper into the religious or spiritual aspects of it, and then we have that too. Here you can see we kind of divide up into yoga, meditation, wisdom, and culture, 4 different paths that we have. And people can come there and see what interests them most and follow where it goes. If you scroll down a bit, you can see some of the things that we have. Ayurvedic, part of the health tradition that comes out of the Hindu tradition. We have community picnics coming up this weekend. If you're all in town, drop in if you wish. Different kinds of classes on bhakti. End of Life Matters is one of our social initiatives. End of Life Care. Keep going down. More on Ayurveda. Kirtan, which is a devotional practice through chanting mantra through music, one of the most central practices that we have. Different types of yoga classes and so on. Urban Babies, a women's group that meets together to get out of the city and meet together. And like that, we offer different kinds of things. Henry mentioned a few questions that we might address here, and he said that we wouldn't have time to do them all, so I understand it. And one of them was, what is it that's unique? What would students or teachers, and in this case, need to know about our specific tradition to better understand it? And one of them had to do with how the values of Hinduism play out in our own lives. So I'll try to briefly answer those. Regarding what might be unique, I should mention, when I was about 19 or 20 years old, I was raised Catholic. My name, Kasturi Das, is a name that I received upon initiation into the Gaudiya Vaishnava lineage. So I was raised David Ramella as a Catholic. And I still appreciate the teachings of Catholicism in my life. But when I was about 20 years old or so, I became, I found an interest in the Bhagavad Gita and its teachings and spirituality through the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, or the Hare Krishna movement, popularly known. And by the time I was 21, I became a monk in that tradition. I lived as a monk in this tradition. There's like the student monk, and then there's a lifelong vow. and eventually worked on developing this Bhakti Center. And so I can speak for the Bhakti Center. I can also speak as a representative of ISKCON, or the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And so I thought I'd mention a couple of things about that. One is that the Hare Krishna movement, certainly in the past, was widely, and maybe not as much so today, but perceived as a cult, or even a dangerous cult. And if we go back to the 70s and even into the 80s, there was a phenomenon called deprogramming, whereby people would be hired to kidnap members of my group and try to what they would call deprogramming, which would basically mean they would, I won't go into too much detail, but get them in a room and really spend time trying to destroy their faith, in all kinds of creative and abusive ways. I don't think that really exists anymore. And I think throughout the 70s there were lawsuits brought up to try to end the Hare Krishna movement, accusing it of being a cult. And we, with the help of academics especially, we won those cases. And I think it's less of an issue now, although that perception may still be there in the minds of many. I personally have been brutalized by police for my faith. These kind of prejudices still do exist. I think gradually it's increasing. I thought I'd throw that out there. And another thing, just more philosophically, is that with Hinduism in general, and let's say in Eastern philosophy in general, it's a lot there. I was watching the previous presentation, and there's so much to cover. So much of it may seem foreign to a Western person. And I think part of it may be that much of the philosophy regarding Hinduism, or you could say Buddhism, deals with what may be called a monistic type of thought. That you could say either that God is one non-personal energy and that we are all God. And that I just wanted to point out that you could divide Hinduism into two general philosophies. One that would be a monist philosophy that would believe that, wherein people would believe that God is an energy, the ultimate manifestation of God is a non-personal energy, that we are all of that exact same energy, that our individuality is an illusion, and that the goal of life is to merge back into that energy. And then there's another group of thinkers and philosophers and another faith that believes that non-personal energy is one energy of God, but that God also manifests in two other important ways. One is within the heart of every living being, and that ultimately the source of it all is the person, or Bhagavan, and that would be one person. So for instance, within the Vaishnava lineages, it's believed that Krishna or Vishnu, who are both manifestations of the one, is, you could say, the one God. And then the question becomes, well, what do you make of the many deities, which our previous speaker had to brush through quickly, and I think it could be difficult to grasp. But in the monist tradition, we believe that all these different gods or deities, they're all just different manifestations of the one. And you can feel free to choose the one that you feel a particular inclination to, and worship that one. And then through your worship, you can gradually elevate your consciousness to the point where you can let go of any deity and merge into that oneness where there is no form, where there is no distinction or individuality. And then amongst the more theistic Hindus, they would believe differently, that there's one supreme God ultimately, and that all of those gods are divine beings, but ultimately just as we come from one divine source or one God, and are dependent upon one God and are empowered to do whatever it is that we do by that one God. That similarly all those devas or gods and goddesses are dependent on and come from that one God. So I thought that distinction, and so with the Hare Krishna movement, they fall into that category. And when you begin to analyze things from that angle, it's not so foreign. I believe. The ideas are not so foreign to what I learned as a Catholic. It's just that I mentioned that. And then briefly about how the values of Hinduism play out in my own life that, in the next 3 minutes that's challenging. But I thought I'd mention a couple of things. And maybe one thing that's practical and one thing that's more esoteric. On the practical end, all of Hinduism is connected to, you could say, a yogic science, a way of looking at who am I? I'm this Atma, this divine spark of spiritual energy within a material body of a different type of energy. And that even my mind is composed of material energy. And that my mind is very much like a computer that's being programmed by what comes through the camera, what comes through the microphone. All that information is being downloaded onto the mind. And it leaves impressions called samskaras in Sanskrit that leave us convinced that this will make me happy and this won't make me happy. Right? That if I get the right job, or if I meet the right person, or if I have more money, et cetera, I would find happiness. The yoga philosophy tells us that actually the happiness isn't found through these external things. Those are, as our previous speaker was saying, temporary things. But there's something deep down that's eternal. That is who we are. And that our nature, if we get down to that spark of spiritual energy that is us, we'll find that it's nature's to be happy. That it's nature's bliss. It's knowledge and eternality and bliss. And so the goal is actually to dig deeper and deeper and deeper and find that. And when we embrace that philosophy, then we can hopefully use that to develop some conviction to move through this world not being bewildered by it, but that every moment of our life kind of becomes meaningful, and every, you could say, challenge in life becomes part of that path and moving forward to getting down to our true essence. It's something, I don't know if you've all seen the film Groundhog Day, but it's something like we keep repeating and repeating and repeating. You wake up every day, so we may go through many lifetimes, hopefully evolving, getting closer to that true nature that is us. And on the esoteric side, I just thought I'd say very quickly is that our belief also is that within every living body, whether it be plant, animal, or human, there's that spark of spiritual energy that is us. So you could say that's the soul within the body. And also, but we believe that it's not only one soul that is within each body, but there are actually two, called the Paramatma. There's the Atma. And the Paramatma, the Sanskrit prefix para, means superior, supreme. So there's also God within the heart of every living being. And so that as we move through this world, I try to meditate always that when I'm standing before another person, I'm also standing before God within them. And that hopefully that draws from us those more, what we could call holy types of behaviors and understandings. That every life is sacred. That every living being, although we may have adopted different types of bodies, different genders, different races, even different attitudes, some of them healthier than others, but that within everyone, they're going through their Groundhog Days and on their different levels of evolution, but that we all share this commonality of our spiritual lessons, of divine spiritual lessons.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. It is true, in scheduling the 3 weeks of this program, it's insane the amount that I ask people to race through really quickly, like in 10 minutes or less, tell me about your spiritual life and your community. But you've offered so much for us to think about and discuss, and we have about a half an hour for questions for our panelists. Mom, dive right in.
Can you speak a little more directly about the guru-pupil relationship?
I know that's an important element in Bhakti traditions, so maybe Kaustuba first, but then other folks as well.
Could you repeat it again, please?
Can you speak a little bit more about the guru-pupil relationship?
Guru-people, or say guru-disciple relationship.
Right, disciple.
Yeah, well, within Hinduism, we'll find many, within the Shastra, within the sacred text, you'll find very clear indications that this is a very fundamental part of the practice. The belief is that the guru is not merely a person, but it's actually a principle. It's actually like truth or divine knowledge handed down from one person to the next. So the role of the guru is to hand that down without distorting it in any way, but also understanding how to make it relevant, how to make it, in a sense, how to prescribe it, just like a doctor can prescribe particular medicine to different people. Understand the psychology of the disciple or student, and how those very broad teachings can be specialized to that individual. There's also an element of inspiration, that the student is inspired by the spiritual practice, the wisdom, the behavior of the guru, and chooses to emulate that. There's also an emotional side to it, where one, with feelings of love for the guru, one wants to serve the guru's mission, please the guru, assist the guru in their particular sacrifice in life, what it is that they do specifically to serve. So all of those are there. And then, of course, with that, there's always the possibility that that relationship or that position may be abused in some way, which is not at all uncommon. And so, therefore, the scripture will give not only the qualification, we'll give the qualifications of the guru and the disciple. And the disciple should be well informed about what a guru is, how a guru behaves, what is valid behavior and what is not, and even when the guru can be rejected if necessary. I find that we live in a day where there's so much scandal, and generally people tend to respond to such scandals as by feeling that perhaps the teachings need to be changed, the practices need to be changed. I don't agree with those types of analyses, but I do think we need to be careful how we practice.
And now, correct me, I may be wrong, and I may be remembering this wrong, but ISKCON as a movement is very much centered around the founder of the tradition seen as a guru, or
Absolutely.
am I wrong?
All Hindu tradition is going to be handed down through a guru, but our founder, Srila Prabhupada, and when we say founder, he was representing a tradition that goes back in India, but he was the person that brought it to the Western world here to New York City back in the 60s. We see him as our founder acharya, meaning this particular branch he founded. And our faith to him is very important, and currently it's his students that are now serving as he passed away in 77. So his gurus, in some cases, his disciples have been served as gurus, and in some cases, grand disciples now.
And for our other speakers, in temple-based Hindu communities, there may not be the same single guru, or maybe there is.
So in our temple, as an example, our spiritual leader functions as a guru to many of the congregants. Predominantly young men get, at least I'm speaking for my temple and for many Indo-Caribbean temples, around their, when they're hitting adolescence, there are various sun scars that
really need some extra help.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There are sun scars, sort of like the equivalent of Catholic sacraments in some ways, where there's a ceremony and they're initiated, and at that point they have a formal relationship, pupil-teacher relationship with their guru. I also wanted to flag, it's very interesting that you asked this question today, because today many celebrate Guru Purnima, which is a holiday in which gurus are honored. So it's just very ironic that you brought that up. But so, and many pundits in our Indo-Caribbean temples do that as well. They also function as gurus. And so anytime somebody has a question with regard to any particular scripture that they need guidance with, direct knowledge, it is said that the guru is required and has a responsibility to share that knowledge with the disciple or the pupil or the shishya, as we refer to them as.
So the Hindu tradition originally, which can be recorded and traced back to over 3,500 years ago, when paper and computer systems were not available to track down knowledge that was being transferred. and there wasn't enough papyrus or palm leaves, the tradition itself, it is narrated, it is heard, it is memorized and repeated. So all the Vedic and Upanishad books that you see now are all passed down through the word of the Guru, the remembrance and memory of the student, and written down and passed generation to generation. We consider Lord Shiva to be the ultimate Guru. So in fact, when they say the Lord Guru, then it would mean to no one else but Lord Shiva, who is the knowledge embodiment of the universal presence. So the Guru Paramparam, Parampara means family, it means heritage, dynasty. So the Guru Paramparam is in itself through Shruti and Smriti, that is through the word and through the memory of how you actually give out knowledge and how you seek knowledge. So that is the tradition. And before every religion class begins, there is a prayer that Panditji made us recite with him or participate in, which is Sadhana Bhavatu, which means, "O Guru, I bow down to you." That is what the student says. And what this Guru says in return is, "O students, I humbly accept your offerings, but also may God grant me the power to give you the right knowledge, to give to you what I have learned and understood to be manifested in such a way that I do not spread wrong knowledge to you, and that we both might learn through this interaction." Because the Guru has never stopped learning. Every day there is a knowledge that he has acquired, and that may come from any resource. It could come from the smallest child who's telling him something. So the Guru is always constantly learning, and he respects the student for giving him the opportunity to teach, and the student in turn says, "Let me take your knowledge and grow with the knowledge that you have to give me with." So that is the loving tradition between a teacher and a student. And there are several anecdotes and instances throughout our scriptures that talk about the student-teacher relationship. The student could go away with the teacher for 12 years, 15 years of his life, and spend his time with the Gurukula, which is the ashram in which the education was imparted to him, and become part of the Guru's household. And the Guru had a lot of say in the student's future. So the selection of a Guru became very important for the parents. So the parents were involved in the child's life to select the right teacher for him, something that we all as parents need to be involved in our children's lives as we go forward.
Pandit Prakash, do you want to add anything on this?
Oh yeah. So Guru, especially today is one of the very special day. We call Guru Purnima. Generally, everybody today respecting to the Guru. That is Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. That is, Guru is, we can say, that is the light. Guru is the knowledge. Guru is the power. And Guru is the Maheshwara, is Lord Shiva. And also, we will say, Guru is Brahma, Vishnu and Maheshwara. He is the creator, operator and also protector. This is the three God. The three powers only we can see, only one place, that is in Guru. That's why the Guru is the most important. And we can see the God in the Guru. We believe Guru, we can learn all the education. Especially Guru Parampara. Guru Parampara is very, very special. That is, traditionally, if you go to in South India, and North India and South India, North India, there is 4 dhamas are there. This is Shankaracharya started that, you can say the temple. There is the Acharya, the Guru, they are coming. One Acharya is taking rest, the another Acharya is coming, the priest is coming. We are not telling the priest, we are telling the Swamiji. He is coming. So that's why the parampara is the most important. Traditionally, the generation to generation connection. So that's why we are very much respecting to the Guru. If you always, when we start any prayer, first we are doing the Guru Prarthana. Without Guru Prarthana, generally we are not starting anything. The Guru blessing is always most important. Whatever we are talking, whatever Vidya, mantra we are talking or teaching to somebody, first we are taking Guru blessings. Guru is here or somewhere, doesn't matter, but you have to bring that energy in our mind. That time only we can continue in our education, and who are learning, they also learn the education, they also do the same thing. Whatever today Guru is doing, the same thing tomorrow, the student, they will become a Guru, they will do the same thing. That is called Parampara.
Yeah.
So just one quick thing, I actually don't formally have a guru, and for my life, I actually always saw my late grandmother as my guru because I learned so much of what I know about Hinduism through her. And then just a quick fact, so for Indo-Caribbeans, the caste system it didn't pass on in the way that you see it in other geographical locations, but many of the pundits who are ultimately end up becoming the gurus in our community are said to be Brahmins, and Brahmins are the caste that specifically are tasked with sharing spiritual knowledge. They are the scholars in the caste system. So that's the one remnant of the caste system that carried from India to the Caribbean. I just wanted to show that bit.
I know guru is a very unique, like in the kind of theological system, it's a very unique, special category, but I love how the kind of broader value of a teacher can also extend to your grandma, can extend to your work with your students in the Punya Vidya classes. It seems like a larger ethic of like responsibility and relationship between teacher and student, beyond just that specific category of guru.
That is correct. They actually share things that happen in their personal lives, in their school life, more easily with us. They find us as resources to advise them more than they would open up to their parents.
Yeah.
And we actually navigate and help them deal with day-to-day situations.
Huge responsibility
It is
to
a
take
huge
on,
responsibility.
Yeah. Question? Bob?
I know you mentioned your grandmother and your position as a teacher, but in a more formal sense, are women generally accepted as gurus?
At this point, yes. There doesn't seem to be any difference between accepting male or female gurus. In fact, the founder of our Purna Vidya class is a Swamini herself. She's the one who started the curriculum, and women are really getting initiated into this. And even recently in India, there was this huge movement of Harita Samahita, where a woman can be initiated just like a man can be into the studies of the Vedas. And it has started to become a very powerful movement with a lot of women's liberation activities that are coming up in the country. Yes,
Well,
I would say.
I just want to clarify quickly, when you say the founder of the class, she doesn't just mean at her own temple.
Oh, no.
It's a curriculum that's used internationally by Hindu temples and Hindu communities all over the place. And internationally founded by
I would say it depends, right? So Hinduism is very vast, and the way in which Hinduism is practiced is very vast as well. Even within the Indo-Caribbean faith, there are various different types of Hindus, and there's fragments in that way. So I consider myself a Hindu that ascribes to the Sanatana Dharma tradition. There's also Arya Samaj Hindus in our community, and there's also Madrasi Hindus who worship the goddess as their primary deity. So it depends. In certain spaces, you will find that there is more of an acceptance of female gurus. In others, not the case. So some of us are working towards that. Sadhana, the organization that I co-founded, every month we have satsangs. Satsang is a collective gathering of people, a sacred gathering of people, and the priest who officiates our satsangs is a female who identifies as queer, and we are trying to shift the narrative such that we're breaking barriers and reimagining or maybe revisiting what Hinduism is. And so I think it depends. I don't think there's a clear answer.
Could you also say a little more? I know, Bana, you asked specifically about gurus, but thinking about ordination of priests as well, like pandit and pandita.
Yeah.
I know in the Caribbean community there's a long tradition of female priests,
Yeah.
but maybe not so much in other Hindu communities.
I think, so in some parts of the Caribbean tradition, so the Arya Samaj tradition, panditas are very prevalent. Arya Samaj is very different, where you actually don't see the deities. The primary texts are the Vedas and the Upanishads, and it's similar to Islam, where there's not a pictorial image of the god or goddess. The same could be said in the Arya Samaj tradition. So yes, that is true for parts of it. There's not a neat answer to this. It's tricky.
And it's sort of by accident that our two ordained religious leaders are both men today, but can you say a little more about the role of women in religious leadership in your communities?
Generally, according to in our Hindu mythology, we don't have any difference between men and women. Whoever has the knowledge, whoever took the permission from the Guru, they can practice anything. Only we have some restriction, some discipline. If they know, they have the knowledge, they can. There is no any objection or anything. Generally, what happening, especially in India, the priest who are finishing their course properly, they are only doing the prayer and all the things. Make sure they will finish their course, and they are always doing the prayer and all the things. But if you go to in different places, if they know little something knowledge, they are also doing. It means whatever the knowledge is, this is no aid. Some maybe they have some more knowledge, they have some less knowledge. This doesn't matter. The most important is the bhakti and discipline and understanding what we are doing. So that's a little different way I know. Especially in India, especially in go to the South India, generally who have did properly course, they finish, they only doing all the prayer and all the things. And other people, they are supporting. They are sitting, they are supporting, they are helping and all the things. I know I'm always traveling all over the world. I went to different country and I'm always living with different community people. Generally, I'm going to conducting different religious wedding and different people, some kind of prayer and other things. I'm looking a lot of differences there. But I think that difference is not a big difference. They maybe in India, we have properly that school and other things. That's why we went to there. We finished in our course and other things. If you go to in just like Guyana, Trinidad, I know there also they don't have that much school and other things. That's why they read the book and learn. That's why it's a little different. So total wise, there's no any different. Everybody is Pandit is Pandit, priest is priest, sages is sages. That is my opinion.
Similarly, as what Prakash was saying, that if we go to the scripture, we'll find, and there's a progression in that scripture from some that's more concerned with ritual and formalities to gradually more essential, and particularly those scriptures which focus on the essence. The idea is that whoever can understand truth and live truth, they can speak truth, and from that person you can gain truth. And so, be it man, woman, whatever age, whatever gender, race, is not a question. Practically, how it doesn't always play out that way. Within the lineage that I'm in, women are ordained as priests, and even traditionally they have served. You see, we have two types of gurus, actually more than two. One is called shiksha, which means the instructor, and another is called diksha, which means the person that performs the formal initiation ceremony. But commonly that one that performs that ceremonies is seen as primary, although that's not necessarily true. But currently in the Hare Krishna movement, women openly serve as shiksha gurus, as the instructors, but they've not yet been authorized to serve as diksha gurus, which is, to be honest, when people think guru, generally this is their first thought. and that is a very hot topic that's being debated at this moment. I certainly expect that it's going to go the way towards where women serve that role very soon. There are more conservative elements, particularly coming from India, that are resisting that. But I don't think they really have a leg to stand on when it comes to this shastra.
I like hearing about hot topics.
I'm going to say one quick thing sort of tied to this hot topic. So one of the justifications in the Indo-Caribbean community about as to why females can't necessarily perform certain rituals or preside over certain ceremonies is because we menstruate. Menstruation is a very stigmatized thing across the board in all different traditions. But one of the things that I've heard in our community is, because there are female gurus, but then I hear people say, oh, that's really wrong, because what if she's menstruating at this time? It's considered impure. But through our work, we're trying again to reframe the narrative, because a lot of these stigmas are not necessarily tied to any particular scripture or scripture. They have no scriptural basis. It's all cultural. It's all things that ended up becoming the case because of patriarchy, and so we're trying to uncover a lot of that.
Other questions? Steve, yeah.
I have a question for you two in the middle. You spoke about your service work, in particular doing beach cleanups, and you spoke about visiting folks in the hospital, and I think your service to the community extends beyond those two things. What's the genesis of that? Why? What calls you to do that?
Sorry, what's the question, please?
Why do you do the service work that you do?
Where, in the hospital?
Hospital and beyond.
Okay. Generally, in the hospital, they are very sick, their mind is, lot of disturbance and other things.
Let me clarify. What within your tradition, what within your writings tell you to do that?
No.
And again, it could be writings or it could be other
Traditions.
Yeah.
No, what is it?
I might visit my aunt in the hospital because I know she's sick and she wants some company. But in Christian scripture, in Matthew's gospel, Jesus said, I was a stranger, you welcomed me. I was sick, and you visited me. Do the same. You do the same as I'm doing. Why do you do? What calls you to do the service work that you do?
Yeah, so mainly their mind and body and everything is, very tired, and they need some good energy, good power. Power means they always have some medication and other things. That's a different kind of power. But they are always looking the nature power. If you have nature power, automatically the body and mind, everything's working. They can get up, they can go to the home. So that's why they are every moment they are looking. So when we can get better, when we can go to home, when we can see the children, they always thinking, but this is not happening. So that time, we believe, and they also believe, create some good energy, some spiritual support. Automatically they will get that power and God grace. They will get the energy. They will improve recovery very soon.
For me, Vanita mentioned Ishtadevata, which is basically your favorite god or goddess. I can't choose a lot of times. I have a hard time with that. So it depends on the day. But most times, my Ishtadevata is Hanumanji. And Hanumanji, so Vanita mentioned the Ramayana, which is one of our scriptures, and it's an epic text. And Hanumanji is the monkey god, and he exists essentially to be a servant to Lord Ram and Mother Sita and all in the Ramayana. And he does it selflessly without looking back because he's serving goodness, and goodness always triumphs over evil. I identify so much with him. In fact, every morning when I'm taking a shower, sing the Hanuman Chalisa, which is 40 verses, and it just gives me this strength and this power to do the work that I do, and I see myself in him. So he can turn something he can be very this small, and he can be like humongous depending on the day. He's a superhero, right? So a lot of the gods and goddesses, as I was growing up, they were my superheroes in many ways, and so his story is what informs a lot of my selfless service among so many different stories in the Hindu tradition that bolster my compelling to service.
So do I hear you saying that someone else from another Hindu belief system, tradition, thank you, who is not acknowledging the monkey god, god of goodness, god of service, they might say, well, service is your bag, it's not my bag. Or is
Not
service
necessarily.
pervasive?
So it depends. So like in the Gita as an example, right? And please chime in. But I also see myself as a karma yogi, right? So if you do good will come back to you, and that's the cycle of karma. And that is. And in the Gita, there are various different forms of yoga. Karma yoga being one of them. So I think that I will not purport myself to be an expert on all of the different facets of Hinduism, but I will say that if you look at various different faith traditions within Hinduism, you'll find very much that messaging across the board in various different texts.
Well, and let me also put this to Kastula and Vanita as well, because I mean, all of our panelists in different ways have been called to community service, whether it's in activism, in ritual work, or visiting the sick, in teaching, well, both of you in teaching. So is there a particular facet or element of Hindu thought or tradition that has kind of inspired you to be dedicated to community work? Vanita, Kastula, and then we tragically have like only a couple minutes to address that question, and then we have to wrap up. But
Hinduism for me has always been part of my childhood. From my childhood was to give back to the community. It is something that I participated in within the community, and I saw how much people were willing to put into the religion and into making events fun, into actually educating the children. Even if you run into elderly people at the temple, they're so kind to children, they're so kind to each other. And that kindness doesn't come from wanting to get something out of it, but more so because of the Hinduism that they practice in a day-to-day basis. And that feeling of having worshipped and practiced in this way, like Aminta said, we have always had religion as part of our daily life. In everything that we do, before we go to bed, we say, God, forgive me if knowingly or unknowingly we have stepped on ants or hurt someone with our language or hurt someone with our actions. We have created a lot of omissions. We have forgotten to thank somebody. We have been mean to somebody. I ask forgiveness for everything that I have done consciously or unconsciously. And with that kind of a traditional upbringing, you just tend to naturally want to perpetuate that and give back. And the only way you can do it outside your family is to reach out to the community, and it becomes part of your life.
I like that idea that, right, it's not necessarily, a specific text like in the Christian scripture or a specific deity like Hanuman, but just the general environment of having been raised in a certain way that inspires you to give back to that.
Right.
Kastula, do you want to?
Sure. I'll speak especially as a Bhakti Yoga practitioner when I answer this question. But I mentioned earlier, and this is something that's broadly accepted in Hinduism, that the nature of the self, we say Sat Chit and Ananda, which means that the soul is eternal. You could say fixed in truth or full of knowledge. And then Ananda means bliss, that the nature of the soul is to be blissful. But if we analyze what is bliss or what is happiness, what is the deepest happiness? Like if I ask all of you, what is the greatest happiness in life? What might you say? say.
No, tragically, no time to go around to take a survey.
Let's say love. Right? Love is where you find. If we have all the other things that we think will make us happy, we have no love for nothing. And if we look, what is the essence of love? What is love truly? What does it mean? There's a definition in a sacred text that says that love is when the object of your love, the happiness of the object of your love, becomes your happiness. So our goal is to uncover that true nature, which is ultimate love. Now that love in Sanskrit, we call this prema. When that love is focused on God, then we call this prema. The very essence, our very essence is to love God. And as was being mentioned earlier, that love may be in a variety of different forms. But when that same love, that same prema, the love that we have for God, is turned and focused on humanity, then that love becomes manifest in the form of compassion. And not in a condescending sense, but in other words that we actually care. So whether it come entirely from a place of, ideally it's coming entirely from a place of true care, or whether it's also coming partially from the idea that I want to uncover that within myself. So let me practice acting out of care. That through that type of yoga, that one can gradually uncover the true nature of itself, the true love that is our essence, that